I absolutely loved the first episode of A Sign of Affection, and the thing that I loved most was the way in which the romance between Yuki and Itsuomi gradually blossomed over the course of their brief interactions together. If you watch carefully, you'll notice that Yuki actually found Itsuomi a little bit off-putting when they first met on the train, because Itsuomi acknowledged Yuki's hearing impairment with like a jarring kind of directness. He'd lean in right up into her face and speak very slowly so that she could read his lips. And he even looked at her like square in the eyes and said, "I've never met anyone like you before." And Yuki was very understandably perturbed by this, at least on her first impression. But then as the episode continued, Yuki began to realize that the very behavior that she initially found so off-putting was actually the thing that was making her fall in love with this strange man. And I think the best way to show how this happens is to demonstrate it through one of Itsuomi's more romantic gestures. There's a couple of scenes where Itsuomi gently places his palm on Yuki's forehead, and he does this in moments where he wants to communicate with Yuki, but her attention isn't directed towards him. And since Yuki is hearing impaired, he can't use his speech to grab her attention. So instead, he performs this gentle physical gesture of placing his palm on her forehead in order to indicate that he wants to communicate his thoughts. And in both of the scenes where this happens, Yuki is initially shocked by Itsuomi's directness, and she kind of wonders if he's done something improper. But then she reinterprets his actions a little bit more positively as just a logical way of communicating with her given the way that she experiences the world, because he obviously can't call out her name or anything like that. And I think that this gesture where Itsuomi uses his touch rather than his words to communicate with Yuki is very important, because it expresses the way in which Itsuomi not only acknowledges Yuki's hearing impairment, but more importantly, he seeks to connect with Yuki through it in a way that feels both affectionate and natural. And the reason it's so romantic is because it shows how Itsuomi seeks to understand Yuki through the person that she is. When Itsuomi places his hand on Yuki's forehead, he acknowledges her in her individuality, and he lets the differences in the world in which she lives shape the way that he communicates with her. And that's why I find their conversation via messenger app at the end of episode 1 particularly beautiful. What happens is this. Yuki asks Itsuomi if he thinks the world is very large. And Itsuomi answers, yes, the world is huge. But then Itsuomi added that the thing that he really wants is for Yuki to let him into her world. And that was the statement that truly crystallized their romance. But the thing that I want to point out is that Itsuomi had already communicated this idea from the very beginning, this desire for Yuki to let him into her world. He communicated it in those two scenes where he placed his palm directly on Yuki's forehead. And he communicated it when they first met on the train, when he leaned right up into her face and spoke so slowly so that she could read his lips. All of these actions were initially jarring to Yuki because of their directness and their strangeness. But rightly understood, Itsuomi was simply acknowledging the differences in the world in which Yuki lived as a hearing-impaired person, and he was seeking an invitation to inhabit that world with her and to connect with her inside of it.